from 4 other planets, who embody in themselves the purpose and plan of the solar logos in relation to the 5 planets involved. In narrowing the concept down to the microcosm, the ego or soul acts warily as the middle principle connecting the hierarchy of monads with outer diversified forms which they use sequentially in the process of a. Gaining certain experiences, resulting in acquired attributes. B. Working out certain effects, initiated in an earlier system. C. Cooperating in the plan of the solar logos in relation to his, if one may use a pronoun in speaking of a life which is an existence, and yet is an extended concept, karma, a point oft overlooked. This karma of his must be worked out through the method of incarnation, and the subsequent result of the incarnated energy upon the substance of the form. This is symbolized for us, if we could but grasp it, in the relation of the sun to the moon. The solar lord with his warmth and light galvanizes the moribund lunar lords into a spurious life. This is the great deception, and the maya of his presence. So runs the old commentary oft quoted by me in earlier books. The above concept has in it truth for the individual soul likewise. This middle principle is in process of revelation now. The lower aspect is functioning. The higher remains unknown, but that which links them, and at the same time reveals the nature of the higher, is on the verge of discovery. The structure, the mechanism, is now ready and developed to its point of usefulness. The vital life that can guide and motivate the machine is likewise present, and man now can intelligently use and control, not only the machine, but the active principle. The great symbol of the soul in man is his vital or etheric body, and for the following reasons: 1. It is the physical correspondence to the inner light body we call the soul body, the spiritual body. It is called the golden bowl in the Bible and is distinguished by a. Its light quality, b. its rate of vibration, which synchronizes always with the development of the soul, c. its coherent force, linking and connecting every part of the body structure. 26.2. It is the microcosmic web of life, for it underlies every part of the physical structure, and has 3 purposes. A. To carry throughout the body the life principle, the energy which produces activity. This it does through the medium of the blood, and the focal point for this distribution is the heart. It is the conveyor of physical vitality. B. To enable the soul, or human yet spiritual man to be en rapport with his environment. This is carried forward through the medium of the entire nervous system, and the focal point of that activity is the brain. This is the seat of conscious receptivity. C. To produce eventually, through life and consciousness, a radiant activity, or manifestation of glory which will make of each human being a center of activity for the distribution of light, and attractive energy to others in the human kingdom, and through the human kingdom, to the subhuman kingdoms. This is a part of the plan of the planetary logos for the vitalizing and renewing of the vibration of those forms which we designate subhuman. 3. This microcosmic symbol of the soul not only underlies the entire physical structure, and thus is a symbol of the anima mundi, or the world soul, but is indivisible, coherent and a unified entity, thereby symbolizing the unity and homogeneity of God. There are no separated organisms in it, but it is simply a body of freely flowing force, that force being a blend, or unification of 2 types of energy in varying quantities, dynamic energy, and attractive or magnetic energy. These 2 types characterize the universal soul, likewise the force of will, and of love, or of Atma, and Buddhi, and it is the play of these 2 forces on matter that attracts to the etheric body of all forms the needed physical atoms, and that having so attracted them by the will force drives them into certain activities. 4. This coherent unified body of light and energy is the symbol of the soul in that it has within it 7 focal points, wherein the condensation, if it must be so called, of the two blended energies is intensified. These correspond to the 7 focal points in the solar system, wherein the solar logos, through the 7 planetary logoi, focuses his energies. This will be later elaborated. The point to be noted here is simply the symbolic nature of the etheric or vital body, for it is by understanding the nature of the energies displayed and the unified nature of the form and work that some idea as to the work of the soul, the middle principle in nature, can be grasped. 5. The symbolism is also carried forward when one remembers that the etheric body links the purely physical, or dense body with the purely subtle, the astral or emotional body. In this is seen the reflection of the soul in man which links the 3 worlds, corresponding to the solid, liquid and gaseous aspects of the strictly physical body of man, to the higher planes in the solar system, linking thus the mental to the buddhic and the mind to the intuitional states of consciousness. Rule 1. The solar angel collects himself, scatters not his force but, in meditation deep, communicates with his reflection some basic assumptions. The way of the disciple. 27. Rule 1. Some basic assumptions. We are entering upon a course of study wherein the entire tendency will be to throw the student back upon himself, and thus upon that larger self, which has only, in most cases, made its presence felt at rare and highly emotional intervals. When the self is known and not simply felt, and, when the realization is mental as well as sensory, then truly can the aspirant be prepared for initiation. I would like to point out that I am basing my words upon certain basic assumptions, which for the sake of clarity, I want briefly to state. Firstly, that the student is sincere in his aspiration, and is determined to go forward no matter what may be the reaction of, and upon the lower self. Only those who can clearly differentiate between the 2 aspects of their nature, the real self and the illusory self, can work intelligently. This has been well expressed in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Experience of the pairs of opposites comes from the inability of the soul to distinguish between the personal self and the purasa, or spirit. The objective forms exist for the use and experience of the spiritual man. By meditation upon this arises the intuitive perception of the spiritual man. Book II.35. The 48th Sutra in the same book gives a statement covering a later stage of this discriminative realization. This discerning quality is fostered by a recollected attitude of mind, and by careful attention to the method of a constant review of the life. Secondly, I am acting upon the assumption that all have lived long enough, and battled sufficiently with deterrent forces of life, to have enabled them to develop a fairly true sense of values. I assume they are endeavoring to live as those who know something of the true eternal values of the soul. They are not to be kept back by any happenings to the personality, or by the pressure of time and circumstance, by age or physical disability. They have wisely learned that enthusiastic rushing forward, and a violent energetic progress has its drawbacks, and that a steady, regular, persistent endeavor will carry them further in the long run. Spasmodic spurts of effort, and temporary pressure peter out into disappointment, and a weighty sense of failure. It is the tortoise and not the hare that arrives first at the goal, though both achieve eventually. Thirdly, I assume that those who set themselves seriously to benefit by the instructions in this book, are prepared to carry out the simple requirements, to read what is written thoughtfully, to attempt to organize their minds and adhere to their meditation work. The organizing of the mind is an all-day affair, and the application of the mind to the thing in hand throughout the daily avocations, is the best way to make study and meditation periods fruitful and bring about fitness for the vocation of disciple. With these assumptions clearly understood, my words are for those who are seeking to measure up to the need for trained servers. I say not, you note, those who measure up. intention and effort are 28 considered by us of prime importance, and are the two main requisites for all disciples, initiates and masters, plus the power of persistence. In our consideration of these rules, I am not so much interested in their application to the magical work itself, as in training the magician, and in developing him from the standpoint of his own character. Later we may get down to the application of knowledge to the outer manifestation of world forces, but now our objective is something different. I seek to interest the minds and brains, and therefore the lower self, of students in the higher self, thereby keying up their mental interest so that sufficient impetus is generated to enable them to go forward. Also, let it not be forgotten that once the magic of the soul is grasped by the personality, that soul steadily dominates and can be trusted to carry forward the training of the man to fruition, unhampered, as you necessarily are, by thoughts of time and space, and by an ignorance of the past career of the soul concerned. It should always be borne in mind that, when dealing with individuals, the work required is twofold. 1. To teach them how to link up the personal lower self with the overshadowing soul so that in the physical brain there is an assured consciousness, as to the reality of that divine fact. This knowledge renders the hitherto assumed reality of the three worlds futile, to attract and hold, and is the first step, out of the fourth, into the fifth kingdom. 2. To give such practical instruction, as will enable the aspirant to a. Understand his own nature. This involves some knowledge of the teaching of the past, as to the constitution of man, and an appreciation of the interpretations of modern Eastern and Western investigators. B. Control the forces of his own nature, and learn something of the forces with which he is surrounded. C. Enable him so to unfold his latent powers that he can deal with his own specific problems, stand on his own feet, handle his own life, solve his own difficulties, and become so strong and poised in spirit that he forces recognition of his fitness to be recognized as a worker in the plan of evolution, as a white magician, and as one of that band of consecrated disciples whom we call the hierarchy of our planet. Students of these matters are therefore begged to extend their concept of that hierarchy of souls so that they include all the exoteric fields of human life, political, social, economic, and religious. They are begged not to narrow down the concept as so many do, to only those who have brought their own little particular organization into being, or to those who are working purely on the subjective side of life, and along what are reionized by the conservative as the so-called religious or spiritual lines. All that tends to lift the status of humanity on any plane of manifestation is religious work, and has a spiritual goal, for matter is but spirit on the lowest plane, and spirit, we are told, is but matter on the highest. All is spirit, and these differentiations are but the products of the finite mind. Therefore, all workers and knowers of God in or out of fleshly bodies, and working in any field of divine manifestation form part of the planetary hierarchy and are integral units in that great cloud of witnesses who are the onlookers and observers. They possess the power of spiritual insight, or perception as well as objective, or physical vision. In studying